That was Heaven's Wrap, A Natural History of the Wind by Leah Watson.
Another hand cream. It's pretty thin, just like the other hand lotion that I got. Oh, this one smells extremely citrusy, almost spicy, kind of like an orange-based cocktail, but also very, what's the word, like herbal. Like if you were to mix orange, grapefruit, and like I want to say basil, but it's sharper, almost like a dill. It's nice.
There's the prepare to be banned. Oh. Then I got the shield and he almost got the shield.
It's if somebody has like a...
Hello. I had another busy day, so you know what that means. I didn't have time to read much today and have to talk about other books that I've read already for Vlogmas, which is great, which is fine. It's what I kind of intended to do. I just kind of started off Vlogmas having a really strong beginning of the month reading wise, and then it all went to shit. Just being busy and hormonal, I guess. And so I have had like a short list of other topics to talk about on such occasions. And so today I'm finally going to, yes, talk about Agatha Christie. Woohoo! The day has finally come. Yes, I've read all of Agatha Christie's books, except for, I think, her autobiography, which I do own. I just haven't read it yet. And I haven't read any of her Mary Westmacott. Is that the name? She has a pen name and she has a few titles under that as well. I haven't read any of those. Perhaps that can be resolved in 2025. Who knows? But of all of the main Agatha Christie books, I read all of them. And it has been years now, but Pato suggested that I tier rank all of the Agatha Christie titles, except that they didn't realize that we're talking about 80 plus titles here. And like some of them are short story compilations, and one is like a theatrical play, and you know, she has different series going on. Like she has her Hercule Poirot, she has her Miss Marple, she has her Tommy and Tuppence, and then she has her standalones. And so, you know, I've been mulling over this for years now, how to tackle talking about Agatha Christie and how to tier rank and garner those precious Gen Z views. But, you know, should I try to tier rank individually, like by each, like tier ranking all of Poirot, tier ranking all of Marple, tier ranking all the standalones, tier ranking her short story collections? But the biggest question that I was trying to ask myself is Agatha Christie still relevant? And I grew up reading Agatha Christie from the library. I would regularly check out the same handful of Agatha Christie titles as a child. Love them to bits. I purchased some of my favorite titles, and so those are going to have the most cracks in their spines since they are, at this point, decades old. And then in the past 10-ish years, I discovered even more titles that my library didn't have, and so they were new to me, Agatha Christie's. And I read those, and some of them I instantly loved and felt like, where has this been all my life? Then most recently, in the past 4 years, ever since I got my Libby app and started reading audiobooks, I've been rereading Agatha Christie's via audiobook, most of them read by Hugh Fraser, who has the butteriest, most dulcet of tones. I could hear that man read from the phone book. It just lulls me to sleep and very fun. The actor Hugh Fraser plays Hercule Poirot's sidekick, Hastings, from like what is it? I think it spans from the 1980s to the 2010s. And I never enjoyed the character of Hastings, but oh, I love Hugh Fraser's voice. And a lot of the other books are also read by the actor who plays Poirot, David Suchet. Those are fine. The Miss Marples, a lot of them seem to be read by Emilia Fox, but definitely, if you can get your hands on an audiobook read by Hugh Fraser for any of these titles, that is what I recommend. But yes, I was just constantly asking myself during these rereads the age-old question of, is it good or was I young? Is Agatha Christie good or was I just a child and thought this was the greatest thing ever? And even 4 years ago, I was still very much I could never rank an Agatha Christie title less than 5 stars. Like I'm emotionally attached to this writer, to this woman. This is an incredibly subjective topic for me. And so I couldn't possibly even begin to tier rank or just even rank, period. But then I was rereading all these titles. I realized, no, that's childish thinking. That's childish behavior. I most definitely could rate a lot of these Agatha Christie titles well below 5 stars. I think last year, maybe it was the year before, I put Tommy and Tuppence book in like my worst of the year, like my bottom 10 of the year, because it felt so juvenile, so childish, so racist. And it's been an interesting past several years revisiting Agatha Christie, critically thinking more of her stories, of her perspective, of her overall message, which is, girl, get your money. Like, as I said, Agatha Christie has over 80 titles to her name. What do you think that means? She made that money. And a lot of the titles definitely show. Some of them just feel so like formulaic for her. She's just cranking these out. However, most of them still feel, however formulaic, still quite charming. Still has her je ne sais quoi, right? Like, she is a master of her craft. And I only realized this after reading Marple, which came out a couple years ago, and it's all these contemporary writers who try their hand at writing a Miss Marple short story, and oh my, does Agatha Christie make it look so easy when it's definitely not an easy thing to do at all. So that's kind of a little bit too much of a preamble than I intended. I'm just gonna tell you my top 10 favorite Agatha Christie books in order, and yeah, here we go. Endless Night. This is one of the books that I bought like during my teens, during my early 20s maybe. Yes, from St. Martin's paperback 2002. And so this is definitely a book that I read from the library, that I probably checked out many times and enjoyed enough to purchase my own copy as a high school student. I probably bought this from Borders. Do you remember Borders? R.I.P. That was my favorite chain bookstore. But Endless Night is a standalone. There's no recurring character, and it's one of her darker, less humorous, more introspective stories where you get a main male character narrator who over the course of this story tell you how he met all these people, how the people died, how it all came to be. And it centers around a house. It's one of the first books I've read that speaks a lot about houses, not like in architectural terms, just in a very subjective way of how much a person can love their house and how much they can feel attached to a house and how much a narrative can hinge on a house. It's very evocative of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and it also, like a lot of Agatha Christie's, but in this one a little bit more, allude to class distinctions where someone who was poor climbed their way up by marrying rich and how that can affect people's decision making. This is very psychological. This is very gothic. This is a romp in those terms. Evil Under the Sun. This, as you can tell, is a more recent publication that I bought in the past couple years. And I think I first read this after having seen the David Suchet adaptation. And it was just one of those instances where I was like, huh, how could I have missed this one? And read the book. I think the David Suchet adaptation was fine, but I really enjoyed reading the original story. And in these publications, you can tell from the spine, it'll say Poirot. If it's a Marple, it'll say Marple. But this is centered around Poirot's vacation where he's relaxing on an island, and lo and behold, someone gets murdered on his watch. And he is forced to figure out who did it. A woman is murdered. She's very glamorous, very rich. Every guest at this hotel is a very viable suspect. Everyone seems likely because they all have a motive, whether financially or for passion. And when you finally discover who did it and for why, it felt so satisfying, because ultimately what Agatha Christie proves in this story is that at the end of the day, a woman got screwed over. And it's subtle, but she still does have a feminist streak in her writing, and I have to appreciate that. It's a flavor of feminism that I really appreciate and love to see in any form of literature, because it kind of makes you question, why is it so subtle? Like in all of the very overt feminist publications, like feminist pieces of media, for the most part, it's because the originators have the freedom to speak out so much. In Agatha Christie's case, it's not like she was a, bra-burning, ultra-feminist person. She was extremely middle of the road, if not heavily capitalist. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, Evil Under the Sun does still speak of how much women get fucked. Murder on the Orient Express. This might be a hot take given its lower placement in my top 10, considering that this is probably her most well-known title. We shan't speak of any of the Kenneth Branagh adaptations. As far as I'm concerned, they're merely vanity pieces of Kenneth Branagh, but the 1970s film adaptation, that I do FW. Go straight to that one. That still hits. Like, talk about storytelling. Oh my god, look how yellow the pages are. And this is printed by HarperCollins 1991. And this is a classic. This is a classic bottle episode whodunit where somebody is violently murdered on a moving train, and the only people who could have possibly done it are the people in the train, who are all extremely diverse, from all walks of the earth, from different countries, different demographics, different income levels. And Poirot, and I miss these old paperbacks so much, because in this one you get the actual figurehead on the spine with a nice illustration like this. I'm pretty sure every single person on this earth has heard of the phrase Murder on the Orient Express, and it is well justified. The story still captivates, it will still puzzle you, and the ending, I defy anyone who has yet to read this conclude the ending of this book. Not only did I find it brilliant, but it was so heartbreaking and felt so true to life. I believe that it actually was based from a true story, like from a famous murder case, IRL. And this is just such a classic example of Agatha Christie's genius of being able to take something that we all know from truth, from reality, and spin it into such a richly told fiction. After the Funeral, another Poirot book. This is, as you can see, another recent purchase. Again, from probably seeing a David Suchet adaptation from the 2000s, and was so captivated from the story, and I had to read the original source material, and a lot of the adaptations change the plot line, change like a key component to the story. Whether it's like an entirely different person who committed the murder, or just change it in a way because it's different seeing on film as opposed to reading about it. So those types of tricks were used, and I couldn't figure out in my head how the book would have told this tale. And this also has a stunning opening premise that sets up the rest of the story. And some of them, I'm thinking of Murder is Easy, for example, starts off strong but ends up very underwhelming. However, After the Funeral is not guilty of that. It starts off strong, it makes the landing. Yeah, I also found this to be brilliant, but once you break it down, it feels so natural to human existence and human behavior, and like this was a romp. This is a page turner. In this one, Poirot is not the main character. He's more of like a background character who supports the main character, if you will. But really the fun of all Agatha Christie books are the characters as opposed to like the main character. The fun is in these complicated British families, rich with so much beef between them. One person having all of the money and the subsequent fight for who gets the money. So that is what is a big piece of this story. All of the characters in this, all of the suspects who have a claim to a piece of the pie are so, however loosely, still richly multifaceted, and you may see them almost as a stereotype. However, they're so easily, wonderfully identifiable in that way. I think there was a couple who were very artsy and very happy about the death in their family because it means that they're going to come into money to fund their theatrical project. It's just little details like that that are scattered here and there in After the Funeral, in a lot of other Agatha Christie books, that brighten the story and make you excited every time they appear. A murder is announced. See what I mean by these recent publications and how charmless they are compared to these 90s versions? Do better. And as you can see, again, this is a recent purchase, and this is a Miss Marple story. And I love both the 80s adaptation with with Joan Hickson, and the more recent adaptation from the 2000s with Geraldine McEwen. This is another great Agatha Christie story where it starts off so strong with a great premise where everyone in this very small village, what is the village called? Chipping Cleghorn, another Agatha Christie story that's set in a small village that seems so idyllic and picturesque and peaceful. However, people are getting murdered in them all the time. And everyone starts off the morning at their breakfast table reading the newspaper and see in the announcement section to please come to their neighbor's house at 7 o'clock on the dot, there will be a murder. And so everyone naturally goes out of curiosity, thinking they're going to play like a murder mystery solving game, until somebody actually does get murdered. And Miss Marple plays a guest of one of these neighbors, and she gets to know everybody. And when you finally see how it was done, why it was done, again, it's so simple. It's always so simple. It's usually either the husband and it was for money, but still there's so much meat in between. And like I said, I love watching both of the 80s and the 2000s adaptations for A Murder is Announced. And I will forever think about how Hinch went on with her life after losing Dora. Again, there's a subtle feminist undertone in this where you do get a female friends living together narrative, and the overall message for A Murder is Announced being that even if you live in a little village, no one really knows each other. And like in every Agatha Christie book, she always drives home the point that you have to talk to people, and in conversation, from either what is said or unsaid, that is how you learn the true nature of somebody. Yeah, I recently rewatched both adaptations and reread this book, and it still delivered. This was definitely an Agatha Christie that I more recently discovered and was like, where the hell have you been all my life? The Mirror Cracked. This ranks so high just based off the cracks in the spine alone. I mean, of course, I enjoy the story very much. This is another Miss Marple, and it's actually set in Miss Marple's village, where she is known, where she knows everybody, but it takes place a few decades past her prime, where a new development has grown, filled with new younger families and people, and a lot of changes occur post-war Middle England. And when somebody is murdered, all these details come to light. Everyone's back histories start opening up, and even though this IMO is one of the Agatha Christie's where the ending kind of doesn't deliver ultimately, I still really enjoyed living in this story. I love Miss Marple's village, St. Mary Mead, which is a fictional village, and I just enjoy reading about all of the old school neighbors who've lived there all their lives, juxtaposed with the younger, newer inhabitants who make their own marks on the village. I love the introduction to one of them, Miss Marple's new housemaid named Cherry. And again, this also takes place a few decades past Miss Marple's prime, being post-war. And so it makes such a great reminder that over the decades of, the 80 plus titles written by Agatha Christie, she is able to build upon these characters, like Miss Marple's BFF, Dolly Bantry, who we first read about when she's the missus at the biggest house on the block, and in The Mirror Cracked, she has long since been widowed and sold the old house and lived abroad and traveled, and has finally come back to the village to live peacefully in a smaller, more modest and manageable cottage. And that is one of my favorite aspects of Miss Marple, just the whole Agatha Christie universe. Not necessarily saying that all these multiple characters run into each other, but just over the years, you really end up getting to know these characters, and they grow with you, and they have lived their own lives over the course of this time. For me, that is the biggest charm of The Mirror Cracked, why I read this book so many times, including all of the times I checked it out from my library as a child. Yeah, I wanted to live here. Hercule Poirot's Christmas, another beautiful HarperCollins paperback. This is my favorite Poirot story. This is the absolute classic British murder mystery of the old rich patriarch violently murdered in his home. All of the suspects are the other family members who are in the house, and Poirot investigates each and every one of them and finds them all highly suspicious, all rank with motive. Wills are involved, of course. Huge estates are at risk. There are old family members who have been there from the beginning, who feel like they deserve it all, juxtaposed with newer family members who nobody even knew about until recently, who enter the story as the dark horse. This book really just has it all. It is so fun. It takes place over the course of the week of Christmas. I might just read this on one afternoon just for the fun of it. I've been so good all year not reading a single Agatha Christie, but now that I'm thinking about this book again, I might break that role I have going on. I can't really say much more about it other than the fact that this holds a very high place in my heart, and on this ranking, deservedly so. 450 from Paddington. This is a Miss Marple story, and I feel like objectively it is the best Miss Marple story, where again it starts off with a banging premise that this old woman gets on a train and sees another train running parallel to hers when the shutters fly open on the window, and she witnesses a man murdering a woman, and she notifies the police, but nobody believes her, thinks of her as just a batty old woman. But lo and behold, this woman named Mrs. McGillicuddy was en route to her BFF, Miss Jane Marple. and she tells her all about it. And of course, Miss Marple believes her friend's word, and she begins the investigation of who was murdered and who murdered her. And though this doesn't take place in Miss Marple's village of St. Mary Mead, it does still take place in an estate. I absolutely love the housekeeper character, Lucy Isles Barrow. Unfortunately, the adaptations, both the Joan Hickson and was it Geraldine McEwen at this point? Yes, I believe so. Both adaptations just aren't up to par. The book is much better. Even though in the 2000s adaptation, Mrs. McGillicuddy is played by Trunchbull from Matilda. That's always fun. But again, this is a family story with complicated relationships to each other who all stand to inherit a significant sum of money. Once the mystery is unraveled, it's, again, so simple, so true to human behavior. And the math just maths. Don't get married. At Bertram's Hotel ranks so high purely on how weathered my copy is. I mean, look at all the cracks in the spine. And for being, I don't know, about almost 30 years old, that is a testament, because I take care of my things. But I must have read this book 30 times. This is another Jane Marple. It is definitely not the best Jane Marple. That's why I stated that 450 from Paddington is objectively probably the best Miss Marple. But I have to rank At Bertram's Hotel higher because, again, I just really wanted to live in this book. This story is Jane Marple leaving her village and going to London to stay at this luxury boutique hotel for some R&R. And this hotel was one that she stayed in as a young girl many decades ago. And she spends a significant chunk of this book fascinated by how much time has passed, but so little seems to have changed at this hotel. Almost like a Twilight Zone type of way, and then interspersed you get these news flashes of like all these crimes taking place, huge sums of money being stolen. You're introduced to several other hotel guests who all seem to be so disparate from each other, and the ending to this, in my opinion, doesn't quite make the landing. However, I love the underlying message of At Bertram's Hotel, which is that change is good, change is necessary, and we shouldn't keep trying to go back to the way things used to be, because that is unnatural. No matter how much we may disagree on present politics and the way children seem to want to drive our country and our culture, it's their world, not ours anymore. If you weren't a critical reader, you would not think of such things. From your read of At Bertram's Hotel, much like me as a child, I was really just agog at mentions of all the afternoon tea snacks mentioned, like a jelly donut, a seed cake, a buttery muffin. And I was just imagining all of the tea settings at their table, imagining being a single woman in London at this luxury hotel, living out all the things that I used to do. So like, again, I love this book so much because I just want to live in this book, but I have to rank it higher because of that overall message, which makes me have to believe that, Agatha Christie isn't all Queen and Country. She's got a little bit of progressive in her veins. And Then There Were None. I've said this so many times on my channel over the past 3 years, but this is hands down the best Agatha Christie book. If you are an Agatha Christie noob and you want to dip your toe into the world of Agatha Christie, I highly suggest that you start with And Then There Were None. It is such a short, fast-paced story. It really zips through. The premise is so strong, and it lands with a shuddering thud. It is a classic for a reason, perhaps the greatest mystery novel of all time. And Then There Were None is Agatha Christie's acclaimed masterpiece of murder and suspense. 10 strangers are gathered together on an isolated island by a mysterious host. One by one, the guests share the darkest secrets of their wicked pasts, and one by one, they die. The recent adaptation for And Then There Were None is hands down, again, by far the best adaptation of any Agatha Christie ever made. I highly recommend watching that as well as reading the book. Absolutely nothing will beat the original source. And this is a clear example of her brilliance and how she makes it look so easy. It is great writing. It's brilliantly done. It's one of my must-read books of all time. And every time I talk about And Then There Were None, I always try to link a video essay talking about the deeper layers within the plot, which I really can't articulate on my own. And hence why I link the video for all of you to watch as soon as you're done reading the book and watching the adaptation. Aidan Turner just has no business being such a thirst trap. But what I love most and what I love best about And Then There Were None and about Agatha Christie as a whole is how on the surface level it can be so fun and so thrilling, but then you dig deeper and you find so much more. She speaks so much, however subtly or however broadly, with a stereotyping brush of human nature and just how base we can all be. This is no secret that this is my number one. It probably is every other Agatha Christie fan's number one title, but we're not here to shock you. We're just here to be And Then There Were None evangelists. So like I said from the beginning, I was asking myself, is Agatha Christie still relevant? Should people still read Agatha Christie? And it's a legitimate question to ask because, she was definitely by no means a saint. She, I believe, is the term knighted? She was a prestigious woman of the crown. I don't know what to say, but she was highly ranked in a colonist society, and a lot of her books have some very bad stereotypes and racist depictions of particular people. As a British woman of a certain high class, she did have a thing for Egyptology and, wearing white in the Middle East, if you know what I mean. And so within the 80 plus titles of hers, there is plenty of bad. I'm not going to call it garbage, but there's a swath of irrelevance, contemporary irrelevance, to wade through if you are an Agatha Christie novice. However, I'm still going to argue that yes, she is still relevant. Yes, it is still worth reading Agatha Christie today for the first time. If anything, for the surface level, for pure exquisite writing skills. If you are a writer, or if you just appreciate well-told stories, she must be a pit stop in your writing journey. The way that she writes characters, the way that she builds upon them over time, the way she paints tension between characters so succinctly based on what we all know about different types of people already. I'm still kind of considering doing a tier ranking for today, for tonight, for Vlogmas. These are my top 10. Oh, an honorable mention. She has many short stories, but I'm going to add as an honorable mention Three Blind Mice, the story itself, and this collection. I'm not sure if other publications also have the same short stories in this. That's the other tricky thing about Agatha Christie books, because over the decades, publishers kind of mix and match, but in my copy, there are these short stories, and I love all of them. There's all of them are good. Three Blind Mice is incredible. Tape Measure Murder is exquisite. It is so simple, but so good. 4 and 20 Blackbirds is another good one where I just wanted to live in that story, in the deep, dark caverns serving Sunday roast. So if you literally want to spend a couple of minutes with an Agatha Christie, I would highly recommend this one. I don't mean to keep apologizing, but today I've just been so unable to articulate, and I don't know, I'm just having a hard time talking today, and it's so unfortunate because I genuinely love Agatha Christie. I have all my life. I'm still thinking about doing a tier ranking. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. Perhaps that'll be my shorts and just talk about one book per short, and at the end put it in a tier ranking, kind of like how Japan eats tier ranks all the restaurants that he eats. So something to think about when I have much more time on my hands. Once I hit 2K, I'm still fiddling around with like all the different avenues of growth I can pursue, try out. Yeah, no one really talks about Agatha Christie anymore on BookTube. I think we should change that. Try to give it a go, or if it's been a while for you, if any of these titles you have yet to hit, please do. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you're an Agatha Christie novice, if you're a Dirty Cash Agatha Christie fan, if you have only heard of Agatha Christie and have been curious. There have been so many recent films lately. The biggest one, hands down, is Knives Out. That really captures the essence of all of Agatha Christie. Fun, romp, and depth, and skill. Just perfect storytelling. So I hope to God that I conveyed what I wanted to articulate in this video. I don't know, just some days, I've mentioned before, but I'm not on every day. And usually I just decide, okay, today's not a filming day, but not during Vlogmas, right? Even if you're having an off day, I still gotta upload. So it is what it is. I'm still putting it out there. Vlogmas 20. Oh my God, we're almost there. 5 more days till Christmas. Yeah, that Hercule Poirot's Christmas book is looking real good right now. And at the very least, any of these titles will have you snuggled up, cozy, reading about people getting murdered. And I know that that's like a big thing right now, but like via podcasts and true crime. And this is something completely different, I feel. I'm not sure if these are for the same consumer. You let me know. Like, I don't listen to any true crime podcasts, but I love my Agatha Christie's, and I do not think of them in conjunction. They feel so disparate in my brain. So yes, please let me know what your favorite Agatha Christie is, if any of these titles sound new to you, because let me tell you, when, for example, a murder is announced, when I read that for the first time, I was so angry that I only recently came onto this title, and I felt like I wasted years of my life living without it. So thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow.